as well, and so we are recording this morning's sermon live. So Numbers 9, if you're new to the party, we have been studying the children of Israel and their experience in the wilderness, in the desert, and we believe that this is our year of freedom. We believe God has designed this year as the year of our Exodus. And so we are looking at what they lived, what they went through as a model for not just how to experience personal freedom, but to also help other people experience freedom in their lives. And this freedom that we're looking for is freedom in physical circumstances, but it's also freedom in mental issues with complexes that perhaps we have in our mindset and the way we think or the way we act, for freedom from even addiction. That's what we're believing for. And so I'm just excited to be walking on this road to freedom with you all this morning. And so we're going to read in Numbers 9, starting in verse 1. Then the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month of the second year after they had come out of the land of Egypt. The Israelites are to observe the Passover at its appointed time. In the 14th day of this month at twilight, you are to observe it at its appointed time. You must keep it in accordance with all its statutes and all its customs. So Moses instructed the Israelites to observe the Passover. And they observed the Passover on the 14th day of the first month at twilight in the wilderness of Sinai, in accordance with all the Lord had commanded Moses. So the Israelites did. It happened that some men who were ceremonially defiled by the dead body of a man could not keep the Passover on that day. So they came before Moses and before Aaron on that day. And those men said to him, "We are ceremonially defiled by the dead body of a man. Why are we kept back from offering the Lord's offering at its appointed time among the Israelites?" So Moses said to them, "Remain here, and I will hear what the Lord will command concerning you." The Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, if any of you or of your posterity becomes ceremonially defiled by touching a dead body, or are on a journey far away, then he may observe the Passover to the Lord. They may observe it on the 14th day of the second month at twilight. They are to eat it with bread made without yeast and with bitter herbs. They must not leave any of it until morning, nor break any of its bones. They must observe it in accordance with every statute of the Passover. But the man who is ceremonially clean and was not on a journey and fails to keep the Passover, that person must be cut off from his people, because he did not bring the Lord's offering at its appointed time. That man must bear his sin. If a resident foreigner lives among you and wants to keep the Passover to the Lord, he must do so according to the statute of the Passover and according to its custom. You must have the same statute for the resident foreigner as for the one who was born in the land. On the day that the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of the testimony, and from evening until morning there was a fiery appearance over the tabernacle. This is the way it used to be continually. The cloud would cover it by day, and there was a fiery appearance by night. Whenever the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, then after that the Israelites would begin their journey. And whatever place the cloud settled, there the Israelites would make camp. At the commandment of the Lord, the Israelites would begin their journey, and at the commandment of the Lord they would make camp. As long as the cloud remained settled over the tabernacle, they would camp. There's a lot in there. When the preacher reads a long text, do you get nervous about the length of the sermon? Well, I want to look at three things this morning. Three things specifically from this text. And the title of this morning's sermon is God in Control? Is God in control? Or if you prefer the King James Version, are we being led by the Lord? Who prefers the King James Version? It's a little more what we're accustomed to in church. It's a little more with the vocabulary we're used to. But listen, if we say that we're being led by the Lord, we're saying that God is in control of our lives. And so, yes, I love to say I'm being led by the Lord, but can I equally or just as easily say God is in control? Because the truth is they're saying the same thing. And so if we can say one and not the other, that shows us there is an issue. Is God in control? A lot of times when we read the Old Testament, we think we're looking at history. And our high school experience with history is we always look at like centuries. We look at decades and big movements, and we sometimes miss the nuance. This text is describing in detail like daily events. And we don't even realize it, but this 2-week period for the Israelites was so charged. This is in their second year. At the start of, it's been 1 year since their Exodus. 1 year that they've been walking through the wilderness. And God speaks to Moses at the start of the first month. They're January 1st. And he says, set up the tabernacle. And so they set up the tabernacle. And this passage that we just read happens at the same time where God comes in and says, listen, I want you to observe the Passover. And if you remember, and if you don't, you can go back and read it in Exodus, but the Passover process was actually a long process. On the 10th day of the month, they had to select a firstborn lamb, a perfect lamb. They had to select it. And then it says that they had to, I'm assuming, bring it into their home, because it says to take care of it. They had to take care of the lamb. Now, don't they take care of all their lambs? Don't they take care of all their sheep and all their goats? And so this command was an extra special care. And so on the 10th day, so this is just 10 days after setting up the tabernacle. And how much work was it to set up the tabernacle? This is a charged moment in Israel's history. And on the 10th day, they're to select the lamb. And then on the 14th day, they're to sacrifice it and go through this week of festivities, of celebration and eating unleavened bread. And so the Lord shows up and says, listen, I want you to tell the Israelites to observe the Passover. So my first point, the first thing I want to look at this morning is, well, why? Why would they observe the Passover? If you remember the original one, it was that the Lord was coming to kill. It was a horrific night where God warned them. He says, listen, I'm coming to kill all the firstborn of the land. I mean, that's a horrific event. This is up there. This is the bomb in Beirut, 9/11. This is like a D-Day on Normandy Beach. This is one of these big historical days of a horrific event. And God says, I want you to celebrate it. I want you to remember it. And so the question is, why? I mean, they slew the original lamb so they would have the blood to put on the doorpost to protect them. Why are they slaying another lamb? Why does God want them to do it not just this year, but he said perpetually? I want you to always do this. Every year I want you to slay a lamb. Were they to take the blood and put it on the mantles of their homes? The scripture doesn't tell us. We don't get that detail. But the destroyer was not coming again to kill. And so the question is, why? Why were they asked to repeat this process over and over and over again? And we can extend it to Jesus doing this with them and saying, as often as you do this, do it in remembrance of me. And so Jesus, in essence, says, keep doing it. And that's why we do it. We posted a communion video this week, and maybe sitting in your home, me sitting in my basement with my little red cup, I'm very far removed from slaying a lamb and taking its blood and painting my door with its blood. It's a very different tradition, but the command is still the same, to observe this, to remember this. And so the question is, why? And my first point is very simple this morning. The answer is actually given. It's in Exodus 12, verse 26. And God, when he was telling the Israelites that they had to continue this tradition, he tells them why. He says, when your children ask you, what does this ceremony mean to you? Then you will say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, when he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt, when he struck Egypt and delivered our households. The people bowed down low to the ground. That response of the people was the original one. And the instructions are to repeat this explanation. This is so that we will remember the night the Lord delivered us, that the Lord freed us. The time that God set us free, we will remember it by killing a lamb. That's a peculiar demand. And I believe the lesson is simply this. I want you all to understand that your freedom comes at a price. I want you all to understand that you're only free because of a death. That there has been a price paid for this deliverance. There has been a price paid for this freedom. Because the problem with the Israelites, and the problem with all humans, and the problem with us in this room today is we take our freedom for granted. We do. We take it for granted. We forget the cost. We forget at what price we have obtained this freedom. And God says, I want you to teach your children. I want you to remember the night that I delivered you, and I want you to understand that it comes at a cost. And so that is what I believe, why God did this for them. Now, what does that have to do with us today? Well, I want to look at these men. This is point number 2. These men that became defiled by a dead body. Now, we're not told how or in what circumstance or what context, but I believe that probably a member of their family died. A member in their corner of their, I can't say it's a village because they're camping out, but probably in their sector, in their section, in their camp, somebody died. And let's be honest, when you're living in a camp, you got to get the dead bodies out quickly. And so I'll assume that their defilement was honorable. Instead of saying that they could have waited a couple of days and not been defiled, instead of judging them for perhaps not realizing it, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll say that their defilement was honorable. But notice their attitude, because this is what we need to understand for ourselves. They come to Moses on the day, and based on what they say, they tried to offer the sacrifice. It seems that they tried. They say, why are we kept from? Why are we being stopped? And so, I don't know about you, but me, if I were Moses, I would say, duh. Did you not just hear God on Sinai call out all these rules to us? Did you not just see the tablets that I brought down and the blood that was thrown all over the altar and all over the book? Did you not witness these events? Because we're only 11 and a half months out from this experience. But Moses doesn't do that. Moses says, come close and let's hear what the Lord has to say. So there's a good lesson in leadership right there that I need to learn. Don't be too impetuous in your reaction. But they come with this attitude. They're like, why can't we do this? What's wrong with doing it? What's stopping us from doing this? Now, why didn't they come the day before? Like, why did they come at the last minute? I mean, we get a little picture into their hearts. Their heart is like, we can bend this law, can't we? Can't we just bend this law a little bit? I mean, come on, is it really that big of a deal? I touched a dead body. I'll wash my hands and we'll offer the lamb. Come on, what's the real big deal here? It's not really the message for this morning, but the big deal is God wants his children to honor his Passover. God wants his children to honor and respect the sacrifice, the price that he's paid. But that's another message for another day. Moses says, okay, let's see what the Lord has to say. Now, we got to pay attention to dates here. We do. And so in the first month, on the 14th day, so let's just, for our culture, it's not January, but let's just say January 14th. January 14th, that's when everybody sacrifices the lamb. And Moses hears from the Lord, and here's the deal. He says, okay, you can do it, but on February 14th. You're going to wait a month. You're going to do it, but not with the rest of us. You're going to wait a month, and you're going to do it there. This is a great test of their hearts. This is a great test to see if they'll bend or not. We just sang this, like, make me an offering, like, make me into new wine. The only way we get to be new wine is if we're bent, if we're crushed, if we're malleable, if God can move us and mold us the way he wants us to. So we can sing the song, but it only actually happens if we allow the molding to happen. And so God says, you can do it, but next month. Now, we don't know if they did it or not. But check this out. I think this is really, really cool. Numbers 10. If you just turn to Numbers 10, verses 11 to 13. On the 20th day of the second month, in the second year, the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle of the testimony. So the Israelites set out on their journeys from the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud settled in the wilderness of Paran. This was the first time they set out on their journey according to the commandment of the Lord by the authority of Moses. Little fact that you should know, one of my favorite books in the Old Testament is Numbers. I don't know what that says about me and my personality, but I do love it. I've read it many, many times. And I have never made this connection before. So I feel God showed this to me this week. Like, what on earth does this passage that we just read have to do with these men? The Passover is a week long, as we said. You kill the lamb on the 14th, and then begins your week of festivities, your feast of unleavened bread. It's one of the three major feasts. Like, think about how important Easter or Christmas is to us, and then multiply that by 10. These festivals are huge. The three festivals are so important for the Israelites. And so these men were told by God, you can keep the Passover, but next month, in the second month. And so on the 14th, it starts on the Sabbath, and then it lasts for a week. And so it starts on the Sabbath, and it ends on the Sabbath. And the Sabbath days in the week are the best time because you don't have to do work. The rest of the week, you do your work. But on these 2 days, you get to put your feet up and relax. It's like the football game on Thanksgiving. Or it's like your movie on Christmas Day. Okay? Now, these men, remember, are told by God, you can keep the Passover. We'll pass over your defilement, but you have to do it in the second month. And so when does the cloud depart for the very first time? On the 20th, the night before their Sabbath. I love this about God. I don't know if you like this about God, but I love this about God. God is testing these men, and he's testing all of Israel. Because what does it mean when the cloud leaves? It means it's time to get to work. It's time to pack up. We got to pack up the whole tabernacle. We got to pack up our tents. We got to pack up our camp. We got to get our animals ready for moving. And this is the first time. They've never done this before. So it's going to be messy. It's going to be hard. There's going to be people running to Moses. There's going to be people texting Moses all day long. How do we do this? This is the first. And here are these guys that have probably had to watch their brothers and sisters have the Passover the month before. Now it's their time. And they're chilling. They've finished their week of eating unleavened bread, which wasn't that great, and eating their bitter herbs, and now they have their football game on Thanksgiving. Now they have their Sabbath. And what happens at twilight, and Sabbath begins at twilight? They sit down, crack open a cold one, and the cloud lifts. And they're like, oh, the test. The test. Now let's be honest, if we were them, we would have been like, really, Lord? You couldn't wait 24 hours? You couldn't just postpone? We're going to be out here for 40 years anyways, 39 more years. Couldn't you just let me? That's not the way God works. Is God in control? And that's my third point. The test was for them. And notice in Numbers, in our original passage, it might have seemed obscure that we read on past the section about these men, but the leading of the Lord, the way that the author of this passage writes, this is a big deal. Think about it. We don't live next to the church, but if we did, imagine that there was a cloud over this church, and when it moved, we had to move with it. And we had to box up our stuff, and we had to get moving vans. Imagine if we had to do that. How happy would we be about the Lord leading us in that way? But that is exactly the way he led them. That's exactly the kind of people he's looking for. People that will be led by him. People that will let him be in control. do we let God have control? Now, before we answer that question, you know I say this all the time, and so I guess really you're seeing my heart. I'm a guy that gets carried away with emotion. I'm a guy, we watched The Blind Side for the first time. I know it's an old movie, but like we watched The Blind Side this week, and like I had to fight back tears in so many parts of that movie. You know, when the underdog gets his chance, and I mean, I love those kind of things. You know, I'm inside, I'm like, yeah. And so when we sing songs like we sang this morning, inside I'm like, yeah, Lord, make me an offering, like make me new wine. But wine is only made by crushing the grapes and fermenting the grapes and having an alteration happen to the essence of what it once was. And so before we can really say God is in control, we have to put ourselves in real circumstances. And so if we wrestle with fear, it's going to mean that like when I'm in a situation where I'm afraid and I feel it and it comes in like a flood, will I in that moment say, Lord, make me an offering here. Sacrifice me in this circumstance and take away my fear. If we struggle with lust and there's some hottie that walks in front of us, in that moment, will we say, Lord, have control of me right now. Have control of my eyes, have control of my heart. If I struggle with anxiety, sitting in this church right now, I doubt there's very much anxiety. I hope there's not very much anxiety. But like when I face anxiety, will I allow him to have control? Because singing the song is great, because we're saying truth. And we have the notes and the atmosphere and the melody to help us move to the place of saying yes. But the truth is really, will we do it this afternoon? Will we do it tomorrow when we're in that circumstance? Will God have control? Because the Tabernacle series that we're in right now, it's about having him live inside of us. And that means that he gets his way, or else he won't live here. And we see that with the Israelites. When they didn't let him have his way, he said, well, then I'm not going with you. I can't go with you. And then you have Moses like, Lord, please don't depart from us. Please go with us. And there's this constant, and we like to think that's a one-time event in Exodus 33. That happened for the 40 years. And we're going to see next week there's some real bad days ahead for the Israelites and Moses. Moses has a down. And we're going to be looking at it in the next couple of weeks. This is not just all wonderful. It's always, it all ends up okay. There has to be a yielding. There has to be a change, an alteration of our essence happening if we're going to be this new wine.